Since I get a lot of people asking me to make more photography-based videos here on the channel, specifically with Lumix cameras, I thought I'd do exactly that today. I've actually spent the last week or so out in LA for a Lumix Creators event, and during that time I did a lot of street photography in the streets of LA, so I thought that'd actually be a really good linking point to sort of talk a little bit more about how I use the Lumix cameras to do street photography, and more importantly, the sort of things I look out for to get the most interesting results. It's really important to remember as well, guys, that photography is subjective, which means that not everyone is going to like the images that you take, and that is absolutely fine. For me, the most important thing is that I enjoy taking the photo, I enjoy the experience of going out and shooting, and ultimately that I like the photos that I take. And if no one else likes them, then I don't really care, because I had fun doing it, and that is all that matters. So tip number one for street photography, I'd say, is look for light and not subjects. The reason being is because you can have a really cool subject like a cool car or some cool guy crossing the street or something, but if the light's flat and lackluster, you're not going to get the shot that you think you're going to get from it. So instead of looking for the subject, start looking for the light and just hope that the subject at some point comes into that frame. A lot of what I do when I'm shooting in cities and stuff is I look for contrast, so that's for really harsh shadows and really bright highlights. So another thing to do when you're taking photos out and about is not stick to the same lenses. Like, don't be in a comfort zone your whole time, because you'll be surprised at how much that actually affects the final image that you get. I do like to use a 35mm focal length like most people do, but I actually find that sometimes if I shoot with a different focal length, it makes the eyes that I have looking at every single scene completely different. So for example, here in LA, I've been shooting with a 7200 f4 S Pro from Lumix, because America's a big boy, man. It's huge, and you have no idea how long the streets are. So having a nice long lens in certain situations can be really good, and also the amount of compression that you get as well with those sort of focal lengths makes for really interesting compositions. By the way, if you like the way that any of the images look in this video, then they were all edited using my one and done Lightroom preset, which is available now on my website. I'll leave a link in the description, so go check that out. One cool feature of the Lumix cameras that we've been checking out at the Lumix Creator Backstage event here in LA is the X-Pan aspect ratio. And in order to access that, just go to your aspect ratio settings in the menu, go down to 65:24 and select that. And then what that'll give you is a really cool widescreen sort of aspect ratio that you can go ahead and shoot in. And it's fantastic because it actually changes the way that you shoot completely, in the sense that you're now getting a more sort of cinema style frame, which means that your perspective of the situation and what you're shooting completely changes. A really nice thing as well is that if you did want to post it on a vertical sort of format, you can always just stack those 65:24 frames on top of each other, either 3 of them or 5 of them, depending on what aspect ratio you want the final image to be. And if you color them all really nicely, you get some really nice results. I have the X-Pan aspect ratio settings saved to my C3 menu, which means that I can go from shooting cinematic style sort of compositions to regular 3:2 compositions, all with a flick of a dial. To-do list, simply configure the shooting settings you'd like to save, and then head to your menu and find the save to custom mode setting, and then just route those settings to one of the C3 slots. When it comes to street photography, or just generally any type of sort of run and gun style of photography where things aren't necessarily planned or there's not lighting already set up for you, it's really important to remember the law of repetition. So essentially the fact of the matter is that when you go out and do it the first time, you're gonna suck. So please be aware that street photography is something that is learned through repetition. You have to do something over and over again to really get an eye for it, I feel. Almost like training for the gym, for example. It's the repetition of lifting heavy things that eventually makes you see results. And ultimately, the best lesson in life is doing. So just get out there and do it. If you're a little bit confused about where to start when it comes to street photography, or if you've just got out and you want to warm up a little bit to get the brain working, then there's a few things that I do to make it a little bit more interesting and to get my head in the right space as quickly as possible. And one of these methods is the one color method. So what that means is essentially I'll go around an entire city and I'll just give myself one color. It's essentially just a rule, if you like. So I'll say to myself, okay, you have to photograph anything red. And then from that point onwards, I've eliminated everything else but anything that's red, basically. So it's really made that net a lot smaller and a lot more sort of streamlined, a lot more niche down, so I know exactly what it is that I'm trying to capture. I also want to make it abundantly clear that even when I get home after 5-6 years of photography and I dump my SD card and look through the photos after a long street photography day, the chances are that I'm culling at least 80% of those photos. If you go out and find that you're just filling up your SD cards with loads of random images, then don't worry, because that is what everyone does, and that is part of it. In fact, it's actually kind of the fun of it, you know, you just go out with your camera and you take photos in a new location. So don't worry too much if you only have sort of 5 to 10 images at the end of a long shooting day that you're actually happy with, because that's actually the case for most people, and well, at least I think it is. The most important thing is to simply enjoy the experience. I mean, enjoy being outside, enjoy using your camera, because ultimately it doesn't have to matter whether you get something that's usable enough to go on your Instagram feed. And I feel like we all need to steer away from that and realize why we enjoy this hobby or this creative outlet as it is, without, you know, the need to post it everywhere. So yeah, if you guys would like to know how to set up your Lumix camera in the best and most effective way possible, then check out this video here, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.